So my salute to the woman of the hour happens to be Abigail. My topic, if you had not come quickly, and it's taken from 1 Samuel, the 25th chapter and the 34th verse. And it reads, otherwise, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has kept me from harming you, if you, Abigail, had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak. To preface this topic today, I want to say that there are three major characters. The first one will be David. He was the outlaw because of Saul's hatred. And so therefore, David and his 600 followers were out about in the areas away from town. And then there is Nabal, who's considered the foolish, greedy, drunken person that was saddled together with Abigail, and Abigail being the brains and the beauty of the couple. And we are certainly going to learn more about Abigail as we go forward. But if you had not come quickly, this woman of the hour had a timely response. And two other scriptures I certainly can connect to her, Proverbs 10 and 9. The one who walks in integrity walks confidently and securely. So as a definition of integrity, being in a state of moral morality, an upright character, one without blemish, one with character. She maintains consistency under pressure. Because sometimes I think when we get under a lot of pressure, we tend on occasion to fall apart. We tend on occasion not to know what to do or who to call. I could look at Genesis, the 12th chapter and the 3rd verse, and it reads, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And I think this was relevant to Abigail. Okay, all righty. Hold on to this slide, but I want to say, run it back a little bit. And I think that the women of pressure, we can be under so much pressure. So probably each of us could identify something from COVID to the ever-present hatred, to family restructuring. Our children, some of them are in school, out of school, some online. So many things are going on in our community today that certainly raises some flags and causes extreme pressures in our lives. When I think about the 2021 Women's International Theme, which is the next slide, I'm again looking at the theme, choose to challenge, because Abigail was a woman who chose to challenge. I'm giving you the background on Abigail, but soon you're going to figure it out. So she was a woman who chose to go against the norm. As I set the stage, we were looking at the status of women during the time of Abigail. This was a time in the book of Samuel. So Samuel was written in the year, if it was a year, wasn't a year, 550 BC. Now we know, as one of my friends said, that was a long time ago when the status of women was incredibly different than it is now. So then Abigail and Nabal were in what we believe to be an arranged marriage. It wasn't a forced one, it was an arranged marriage. And FYI, in the year 2017, 55% of marriages across the globe are still arranged. 90% of the marriages in India are arranged, and the divorce rate is 1.1%. Now you do the math on that, or you do the reasoning behind that. So in the days of Samuel, the women certainly could bear children. We were expected to do so, work the household, usefulness for trade. And guess what? We were a piece of property, a business transaction, a merger is what they want to call it today. But Abigail, as we will see, she stepped out and she stepped up, and she went from housewife to warrior, even though she was in an arranged marriage. Okay, we're going to go ahead and see what else there is to know about this woman that was needed. So I have to take you back to the roots just for a second or two, So the announcement came out. We realized that poor Adam was all by himself. As you can see, he's messing around with the animals here, but he was alone and in need of a companion. So therefore, a helper suitable for Adam was arranged. Instead of reaching down to the ground, the Lord reached in and assessed the material from Adam that was already bursting with life, and that was bone. We were made of bone, Adam of dirt. I don't believe it was a coincidence that this happened. I don't want to believe that we could have been done from dirt as well. So the original intent here was for there to be a helpmeet. And in order for me to truly embrace the meaning of helpmeet, I had to realize that the Bible was written first in Hebrew. Jewish men all wrote the Bible with the exception of one. So if you remember who that one person may have been that was not of Hebrew background, just hold that to the end and you might win a prize, okay? So since the Bible was written in Hebrew and it wasn't translated to English until the year 1612. So let's go ahead and see what the Hebrew translation of the word helpmeet really means. Okay. Aha. This is what we came up with just quickly. So helpmeet translates in the Hebrew to two words. Ezer, someone might say Ezer, Kenegdu. So the Ezer was only used in the military context, were primarily used in the military when it was related to God's help. And in Genesis, it refers to co-warrior. And so it's mentioned 21 times in the Old Testament. And so I went looking in the Old Testament trying to find the word E-Z-E-R, but it actually translates into warrior or helper. So it is used 16 times as a helper of God to Israel and as a warrior. So Ezer or Ezer translates into warrior, into rescuer, and one who saves. We know that we are a warrior because if you mess with one of our children, we will gear up. If you mess with anything that belongs to us, we will gear up. The other part to the helpmeet was kenegdo, which means as in front of him, of the same nature, or what we call mirrored. So Eve was a person to be similar to Adam. There would be mutuality and harmony, a warrior helper of the same nature, or again, a co-warrior. Okay. Had to do an acrostic for Abigail. So I said, A, she was authentic. What does authentic mean? Because you will see that this is probably the most important description or attribute for Abigail. So she was true to her personality, her values, and her spirit. Regardless of what circumstance she was under, she rose to the occasion and she acted in the way that God would have had her to act when she could have easily acted otherwise. She was honest, and you would see that she owned her own baggage. She was a believer. Again, as I've spoken before, she was a woman of integrity. She was grateful with the spirit of humility. She was aware. She had an eye for the prophetic. She was independent despite her negative circumstances at times. And she was a leader who knew how to use her weapons to her advantage and save her people. I didn't know a lot about Abigail until I started this study, and it opened up my eyes so much to see who this woman was. And even more, let's look at Abigail, the woman with brains and beauty. Her name means cause of joy, our Father's joy, our Father and happiness. According to the word and the theologians, she had an unknown parentage or genealogy. She was in an arranged marriage, man-made, so to speak. And when she arrived on the scene at Nabal's house, it was believed that the servants were so glad to see this sweet presence that they actually looked at her as the good angel of Nabal's household. They thought that she was a, quote, gladness bringing presence. And she had knowledge of the Jewish history, and there was evidence that she had training reflective of a godly home. So she was fully acquainted with the teachings of the prophets in Israel. So let's talk about the story. Now that we have a little background. So now sit back and relax for those of us. So once upon a time, there was a man named Nabal, and this man was rich by all rights. He inherited richness and he made richness for himself. In the book of Samuel, it says that he was rich, that he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, but he was a harsh and evil man according to the scriptures. And somewhere in the midst of things, there was the runaway David. There was a man with his 600 followers, and he was nearby in an area where Nabal's shepherds were doing some shearing. And David helped out Nabal's group from time to time. And he did some very good and supportive things for them. And whether this news got to Nabal or not, it came about that one day, David was in need of a little help. And he sent a group of people to Nabal, and he was looking for a favor. And he told the people that he sent out, so I want you to be kind, I want you to be respectful, and I want you to go with the cheerful heart, and I want you to greet them on my behalf and tell them to have a good life and shalom to their families, shalom to them, peace to you, peace. Just put it out there. And he says, whatever you can provide for us, that we've come on this festive day, and what can you do to help us? So that was the sweet request. But Nabal responds back and says, who is David? Huh? Who is the son of Jesse? Shall I take meat, bread, and water from my table and give it to people I don't even know? I don't think so. So the men returned to David. And David, familiar with fighting, says, I want you guys to strap up. I want you to put your swords on. And remember, he had 600 men. So he told the 400 men, gear up. And 200 stayed back with the baggage. So I have you to understand that Abigail had some followers as well. She had a presence and a force. She was a force within that household. And it came about that one of the young men went to Abigail. And I don't know exactly how the language he used, but he says, here's the thing. Or maybe he might have said in a little more slang, let me yell at you. Let me holler at you, Abigail, because I got something to tell you. And he says, so listen, David sent the messengers to your man, to Nabal. And Nabal, I want you to know that in the NIV version, I think it says he railed on them. And another one said he became angry at them. And he said, but I want you to know that David helped us out when we were out there. He was like a wall to us day and night. They were all around us, but they never took anything from us. They only did good for us. But I want to give you the heads up because I know right now that there's some plotting going on against our master. He didn't say your husband. He said our master and all of the household of Nabal. But I want you to think about what you should do, because remember, you know who your husband is. This is one unapproachable man. This is a man, according to NIV, who is worthless, that no one can speak to him. Do you guys know anybody like that? You can't approach them on any day of the week. Or if you do, you're already prepared to receive what they have to offer, and it won't be a pretty picture. So he's given her the heads up. Okay, and I want to remind you that this is an alcoholic man she's living with. And if you've ever spent any time or much time around an alcoholic, you know they have some behavior changes. They have some changes in times where they're not at themselves. They don't eat much. They drink, they yell, they shout. They can be abusive physically, emotionally, in every way possible. So he's given her the heads up. Okay, so let's see what Abigail, the warrior wife, is thinking or she's about. So this is the woman who has the brains and the beauty. This is the woman, just reminding you, saddled, married to a foolish, harsh, brutal, and a drunk, unequally yoked. And we know the trials that can happen to a group, to a woman, to a man who is unequally yoked. The word says he was avaricious. And I thought, ooh, that's a new Toastmaster word, Elder Gathers. He was avaricious. That meant that he was extremely greedy for wealth or material gain when he had plenty. So being in an abusive household, I could imagine that Abigail could have suffered some emotional damage, some mental damage, but I know also that she knew who she was in Christ Jesus, and she was raised well, whoever raised her. But she was saddled against this unmanageable man who was stubborn and ill-tempered. And when you are in a marriage where you are paired off, you tend to probably think in a subdued manner. So he was an unbeliever. So as his name means folly or foolish, he didn't worship the Lord. And certainly he didn't bow his knee to he bowed his knee to the God of this world. So unapproachable. Went on binges. So if you see the picture of Abigail, this sweet, beautiful woman with all the brains, and she's saddled against this man. So what does my woman do? Let's run ahead and see what the future holds. So Abigail, woman warrior, she had a good understanding of the word. And she had some weapons. She didn't have to worry about swords or gearing up or guns or weapons or rocks or slingshots or whatever the weapon was. She used her tactical leadership. I like this woman because when I looked up the leadership and tried to remind myself of these things, I thought about, well, was she a strategic woman or was she a tactical woman? And I tried to refer back to my reserve days and my courses that I had taken, and I decided that she was a tactical woman with tactical leadership skills. She did not delay. So tactical people have short-term goals. They want to turn this thing around quickly. So she hurried up and did some things. So she hurried up and she decided within herself that she was going to do some things, because I'm going to mention now, but she went and gathered up 200 loaves of bread. And I don't think she did it on her own. She had her own followers as a warrior as well. So it looked like she got together some sheep and 200 cakes of figs and 2 jugs of wine, because she knew what to do. She got 5 measures of roasted grains and 100 cakes of grain. I mean, she put it all, they put it together for her because she had someone on her team. But before I go, I want you to see that her weapons were courage. She was humble, she was wise, and she was prophetic. So let's just see how courageous she really was. All the time things were going on, I know her mind, the wheels of her mind were turning. So she said to this servant who had given her this news about what was happening and the plan that was being made. And while David was gearing up, she told the servant, you know what? You go on before. I'll come after you. But she didn't tell her husband Nabal. So someone may venture to say that she was hiding things. But see, when you are on a mission, because who knows, for such a day as this, she may have been waiting all those years. But in the meantime, David was getting ready. He was saying to himself, you know what? I helped those people. I didn't do it for nothing. And he's trying to return evil for the good. It's on. And he says, may God do to the enemies of David what I'm getting ready to do. So he was revving up. And it was so, according to 1 Samuel, the scripture, as she rode on the ass, that she came down by the cover of the hill, and behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them. So I asked myself, she sent the servant on, but she rode on the ass and she came down by the cover of the hill. So was this a position where she would seem vulnerable or courageous? At any rate, David's men could have come down on her with a mighty force. They could have easily said, I didn't know whether it was man or woman, I just didn't know. We could have. But she placed herself. She took a tremendous risk at this time. So this was the courage that I believe that she showed. And next, let's see how she showed a spirit of humility. In 1 Samuel 25, 24, and 27, she fell at his feet and said, pardon your servant, my Lord, and let me speak to you. I think she probably said it in a very soft voice. And she says, hear what your servant has to offer. Please pay no attention to my Lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He's just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. But as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my Lord sent. And let this gift, which your servant has brought to my Lord, be given to the men who follow you. So is that a spirit of humility? She'd never met David before, but she knew about him. Was she wise? Let's see. So in verse 28, she says, please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you, David, fight the Lord's battle, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. This was a wise woman. See, a wise woman knows how to build her house up. She had enlisted the servants, so she had her own small volunteer army. She had it put together, and no doubt over the years, for such a time as this, she had planned to be alert and to come quickly when this moment arrived. When this challenge came up, she chose the challenge because she was equipped, because she was ready, because she was authentic, because she was a leader, because she was a person of integrity. Let's see about the prophetic part. Verses 29 through 31. So even though, and she's talking to David, again, she has some knowledge. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies, he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him, and has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my Lord success, remember me, remember your servant. And for the Toastmasters in this group, I want you to know that the theologians said officially that this is the longest recorded speech by a woman in the Old Testament. So this is an opportunity where she presented herself, and she's talking to David from a place of prophecy. And I thought this was noteworthy again for this time frame, 550 BC. Okay, so we have it. Ladies, remember that commercial? We've come a long way, baby. As women, we have come a long way, women of war. It is true that we came from a place of the helpmeet to warrior. See, but all the time, because in 1612, when the Bible is translated, we didn't hear a lot. I know growing up, I don't remember hearing the story of Abigail, but she waited on the Lord. And when the time came, Abigail did not delay. She did not tarry. We switch back on me. Go back to there we go. She didn't tarry. So she prayed. When she told the servant to go on, I think that she got those things together, but I think that she went into that place. I think she went to a place of prayer, and she positioned herself to fulfill the Lord's will. And I don't know what happens sometimes, but I know we do some self-talk and we do some calling on Jesus because we align ourselves. We want to do his will, not our will be done. And when she saw this window of opportunity, I don't think that she went to consult with anyone. She didn't collaborate. She didn't confer. She just did what she knew to do because she was worrying for her home and for the people that she had come to love. So she went into her tactical leadership mode. And when it says ready, set, go, she sensed a suddenly in her spirit and she had to take action. She averted a catastrophe because David said to her, listen, my friend, had you not come quickly, some things were going to happen. But because of you, you averted a catastrophe. You saved the lives of even yourself and that of your husband. And I don't know if he knew probably at this time who Nabal was, but Nabal probably had a reputation. And maybe that's why David gently sent these servants to him and just pleaded and tried to follow sweet protocol by addressing him and just being, again, in order. So because of Abigail's action, she, for the rest of her life, would be the best of her life because she had acted on God's will. She had created a life that brought joy and happiness. So that, as it turns out, after it was all said and done, she returned back to her home. And so she decided that she wanted to tell Nabal exactly what she had done. So when she goes in to tell him, she realizes that he is in his partying, drinking mode. So she looks around and she decides, again, perfect time. And this is not the time to approach him. I'll wait until the morning comes. So when the morning came and she went to Nabal and she told him of the scenario, Nabal just lost it, had a heart attack, and he turned hard. It says he turned hard. And 10 days later, Nabal was gone. Dead, he was gone. So here's the story. So we look at the Dear Abby. I don't know if people used to remember the Dear Abby column. I'm sure he might have said something like, Dear Abigail, according to the Bible, he says, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which sent thee this day to meet me. And blessed be your advice. And blessed be you, period, because you've kept me this day from coming to shed blood and avenging myself with mine own hand. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. Now, David was quick to take a wife, but I believe he got a very, very good catch this time. I have read that he was married 8 times and he had all these concubines, but he had a good catch. And some people say that this two made a very wonderful couple. But I later realized in this chapter that David had sent his men to Abigail to see if she would consent. And then they turned around and left. But Abigail, I read, took about 5 maids with her, servant ladies with her, and she took off and she went to find her man. So the rest of her days would be the best of her days, and who blessed her were able to bless her. And God said, I would curse those. So Nabal, she didn't have to worry about a divorce because it was a done deal. He fell dead. He fell in a heart attack and he fell stoned. And 10 days later, it was all over. He packed it in. So this is my story. As I always say, woman of war. So no, if we know who we were purposed to be, yes, I'm in the kitchen, but you know what? Also, I'm gonna be looking out for my household. I'm gonna be looking out because we are co-warriors in this business together. So in salute to Abigail, woman of war, ladies, it kicks me up a notch to know that this is a woman that I've heard very little about, but when I look at her from the standpoint of who she was, a woman of integrity, but most importantly, a woman who was authentic in every way possible. And with that said, I always like to end with the same thing. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So, Sister Deidre, if you give me that last slide. I'm going to open it up for questions, but I have presented a set of challenge questions. And my ladies, if you see any of the questions on the screen that you would like to address, I'd like for you to just take a moment. Number one, Abigail's marriage was man-made, unequally yoked, and she was saddled with a drunkard. How would you describe her level of confidence? If you were ever in an abusive relationship, would the life of Abigail be encouraging? Arranged and forced marriages still happen. And by the way, those forced marriages happen in South Asia and Africa. Those are the only two countries that I noticed that forced marriages still occur. How would you respond to an arranged marriage with one of the richest men today? Number four, if you manage to escape an abusive relationship, what would you do to ensure that it would not be your plight in a future relationship? That's one to chew on. Number five, some women believe they can change a man after marriage. What are your thoughts? Was the marriage a Beauty and Beast relationship? Did Abigail remain faithful throughout her marriage to Nabal? Do I have a taker for any questions? It's open up. I love you guys. Thank you for your patience. You can unmute or you can go for it. Come on out together. I know you got one of those under gear.
Hi, Sister Woodridge. This is Judy.
Hello.
I think on number 5, I'll just comment. And it's still true today. Some women do believe that they can change a man after marriage. And what I think about that is, if during the dating period, you saw things that were certainly not of God or things that were questionable, and you prayed about it and you talked to him and you couldn't change him,